The Dylan Raiola era is here. This weekend it starts in Lincoln. UTEP is now led by Scotty Walden. They grabbed him out of Austin P. Successful coach. He's got a coaching history that links up with Matt Rule. They're friends. And this is silly, Gary, but I'm a little jealous of Scotty Walden. All this NCAA 25 we've been playing. This guy's living that dynasty dream. Just moved up from FCS division into a bigger program in Texas. I'm honestly rooting for him. Not this weekend, but this is not going to be a dangerous game for the Huskers, is it?
God, I hope not. If this is a tough game for Nebraska at any point, then I'm going to feel even dumber for some of my higher expectations, considering I'm usually pretty tampered. But this team is clearly in a full-on rebuild. They have so many transfer guys that are in. It's going to take some time to get to where they want to be. And I don't think if both programs are doing what they intend on doing, even when they're where they want to be, they shouldn't be on Nebraska's level. Now, having said that, we've seen teams that should be guaranteed wins that we squeak out or, God forbid, lose. So I'm not expecting that. This game, to me, is more about Nebraska and where they're at after this offseason, adding Raiola, guys developing a second year with all these coaches, this system, the culture, all those types of things. Man, from the film we watched, from what we could find, because so many of these players are coming with him from Austin P. And there's other guys transferred. I think I was telling you, the site that I use to look at a lot of teams' depth charts, they have two starters, a defensive tackle and a corner, that aren't transfer guys. So that doesn't mean they all came from Austin P with him, but a lot of them did. He said in one of his press conferences we checked out that they had 9 returning starters. A bad team only returning 9 guys, a bunch of transfer guys. You would assume they're at positions better, but that's a small part of the equation, right? We've seen that. We've seen Nebraska have guys that are improvements from a guy a year or maybe even 2 ago at certain positions. But if you can't get it all gelling and clicking together, it doesn't really matter. So I'm not expecting a whole lot from them. One thing I noticed when we were watching the Austin P tape was a lot of 2x2s, a lot of 2 receivers on both sides of the field, sometimes in stacks, sometimes, side by side, not a lot added to the line. And they're going to try to get us into situations where the middle, especially deep middle of the field, is thin. Their offensive line didn't look great. I don't know what kind of additions have been made or improvements are going to be made to help them in that area. It could come down to as simple as a missed tackle here or there turns into a huge play, because if you're going to get wide and try to cover guys, you're going to be thin in areas. And that seems to be his, it's listed as a spread offense. It seems that he tries to kind of utilize that middle of the field by pre-snap, having everything stretched so wide. It'll be a test early on for the defense that they are wrapping up. Guys are, getting to the ball that aren't, it's not necessarily their guy, but guys swarm into the ball to make tackles. On the defensive side, I mean, it seemed like every kind of misdirection or counter, things like that, they were biting on or getting eaten up by. So I don't see this being definitely not big. I don't see it being much of a challenge for Nebraska early on. I would love to see Nebraska just come out of the gate swinging like Rule's talking about doing. And I wouldn't be mad at all if by halftime we started seeing Kalen and Harburg taking snaps and other guys on defense and other positions, especially all that depth in the wide receiver room. We talked about getting a lot of those guys cycled in. But we've had games like this where we thought that was going to be the scenario, and in the fourth quarter, we're trying to put teams away. So I think this is a small measuring stick for Nebraska. Can they put away teams early that they're supposed to? Can they get deeper into that roster, getting guys experience that might be backups next year, like that deep if possible? Let Raiola really get comfortable with his first college game, but not in the same sense. And it wasn't his first, but not in an environment or a situation like Sims was last year on the road at Minnesota in a whiteout game or whatever, So I think everything's kind of lining up for Nebraska to get off to a good start. They have to stay out of their own way, and that's been their biggest problem for the last several years. Games they should blow teams out, they barely win. Games they should win, it comes down to the wire. Maybe they win, maybe they lose. And then other games where they kind of surprise you and hang around longer and they end up losing by a field goal down the stretch. So this has to be the beginning of that turning point they've all been talking about. And you can't have even real moments in a game like this that you struggle and think you're going to where we're all kind of anticipating they're going to go for the season. A big factor, I think, is going to be this is their first game of trying to enforce everything they've been implementing in their offseason. They're where we were at last year with, again, like you said, no disrespect to them, less talent essentially. And I would really hope not as good of a coaching staff. So every opportunity is going to be there for Nebraska. But Rule and this staff has put such an emphasis on protecting the ball. This is the type of team where you have to have no turnovers, right? If you have a pick or a fumble here or there against maybe Colorado, but especially once you get into the Big Ten play, things are going to happen. You're playing really good athletes and really good defenses, especially as far as us turning the ball over goes. This isn't one of those teams. I think you're super disappointed if you're having trouble protecting the ball against a team like UTEP in a rebuilding stage, bunch of new players, new system, all of that. So I would keep an eye on that. But again, I think this just has to be, in a weird way, a statement game before you get ready for Colorado. Only allowing 3 sounds great, but if things go smooth, I think you should be for sure 2, but 3, possibly even 4 deep on the defensive side. And like I said, if they stick with that spread offense, now you're kind of even in the playing field a little bit. You've got guys that haven't really played much, if at all, getting in later in the game. And going back to what I said, a missed tackle here or there could spring some big plays where you're looking at least multiple field goals, if not a garbage touchdown here or there towards the end. But with that, when you look at how deep Nebraska's offense is, from quarterbacks to running backs to receivers, we've got running backs and receivers. We think some of those guys should be starting that are going to be the 2 and 3 deep. Alex Bullock might be the 3rd or 4th guy, in the 3rd or 4th deep, I should say, receiver who started last year. Harburg's probably going to get a lot of time at quarterback, who was a starter better part of the season last year. I think the offense should be able to continue to put up points throughout the entire game. I wouldn't be surprised if, as they get deeper into the defense, because we lost most all of our linebackers, Wright's out, so you're going to have kind of unknowns to start the game there. And if you get into a position in the game where you can go a little deeper, that's where you're going to see some mistakes made. And I think that might scoreboard wise hurt them. But I'm kind of with you, man. I'm still thinking a 30-ish, mid-30s point win. But I want to see real clean football. I don't want to see illegal shifts on the offensive line, protecting the ball, no dumb turnovers, and then just very consistently and methodically do pretty much whatever they want to do on offense, and then see that defense basically pick up where it left off last year.
Give us your score prediction in the comments. Can't wait to see you all for the live stream of the game. Be looking out for that on Saturday. Until then, go Big Red.